Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. Hope you are doing okay. We're midway through the summer break, so while Charles Leclerc is drinking cocktails in Monaco, George Russell takes his top off and Zhou Guanyu plays with his cat, all of which you can check on the Sky Sports F1 Instagram page, all of which have happened this summer. Ted Kravtiz and I thought we'd go through some of the team principal news that has happened over the last few weeks. Ted, before we get into that, how are you? How was your summer break?
And I dress as a Frenchman, Matthew. I am wearing my Breton fisherman's T-shirt, and possibly should have ironed it, because I'm spending, I was going to say most of my days, all of my days watching the Paris 2024 Olympic Summer Games. And aren't they just magnificent? You forgot Esteban Ocon on a boat as well.
There's a few I've forgotten. I was actually going
to... I hadn't seen the Charles Leclerc one, seen the George Russell stuff. Valtteri Bottas in Norway?
Yeah, he's got sort of sauna, cycling, seems to be doing a bit of both.
Yeah. So has ran away from the warmer climes of the sort of southern European area. But yeah, no, I've been just watching the Olympics, absolutely loving it. Watching as much as I can from the taekwondo, which seems to be on quite a lot at the moment, to watching KJT, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, in the heptathlon. Has she won it yet? By the time this comes up, she might have, or she might have not. My kids loved watching the high jump. I loved Mondo Duplantis, Armand, otherwise known as Mondo. Did you know he's a Red Bull athlete?
I did not, but it doesn't surprise you, does it, when you see how incredible these guys are? Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me. And of course, I like finding these things out, later on when, of course, Mondo would not be allowed to wear, his Red Bull cap. Obviously doing the Olympics. He's representing Sweden, not Red Bull. But it doesn't surprise me, later on to find out that they're part of the Red Bull family. And he might have been at a Grand Prix for all we knew of Mondo before that. But he looks really cool, doesn't he?
There is a funny link between pole vault and Formula One, because I learned off my significant other that the pole vaulters travel with their poles. And it's not like these poles collapse. So these are 5-meter poles that they have to take on planes around the world, a bit like Formula One. James Allison, for example, wasn't he? He had the front nose cone in his hand luggage. But actually, you might think these kind of things go around the world in these sort of specially designed, amazing, high-tech things. But no, the pole just goes on in hand luggage, not in hand luggage, in the hold.
Wow. That is interesting. I didn't know that. And it's quite long. So having to get it in, well, you kind of broken it.
Yeah.
Having to get it into the hold might be quite difficult.
Yeah.
No, interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that. So yeah, I've been loving the Olympic Games. And Matthew, I found out a fascinating but yet slightly disappointing thing about them. Did you know that, I liked my flying and was impressed at the reference to the Montgolfier brothers, who were kind of the pioneers of tethered flight, and in fact, not even tethered flight, balloon flight. The French thought of that first with the Montgolfier brothers back in, 1700s, 1800s, whatever it was. And that's what I thought was the Olympic flame hanging from a Montgolfier brothers kind of balloon over Paris of an evening so everybody can see it. I only this morning, 13 days into the games, found out, because they're trying to make the Paris Olympics the most sustainable Olympics ever, that's not actually a flame. It's electric lights with water mist hanging down.
Wow.
So the Olympic flame is still lit, but it's a very small lantern at the bottom in the Jardin des Tuileries. It's a small lantern so that they don't have to waste a load of gas powering the cauldron, the Olympic cauldron. Did you know that?
I did not know that. And sometimes there's things you wish you didn't know, because it's sort of ruined the illusion of these amazing things that you just see on TV. So there you go. Sometimes you don't want to see, what's the expression? No, anyway, we don't need to get down that.
Anyway.
I was going to ask you whose summer you can most relate to from the team principals and drivers. And I think I'm going to say it's Lewis Hamilton for you, because Lewis has been at the games, enjoying it.
He has been at the games, watching Miles Chamley-Watson, his friend, the US fencer, who just missed out on a medal, unfortunately for Miles. Although that was in the team foil I'm not sure how he's done in the individual foil. But as an ex-fencer myself, I'm glad he's gone foil and not the crazy people who do épée or sabre.
We do not have time to get into your fencing history, but my goodness me, I would love to get into that.
Foil's a proper art. You can only hit in the trunk of the body. Épée, you can hit your arms, and sabre, you can hit anywhere. If you do sabre fighting, you can essentially whack them on the head or the arms or the legs or something. It all counts. Foil is the more sort of distinguished, part of fencing. Apologies for any fencers if I got that wrong. But no, Lewis has been at the games with the Flying Tomato, hasn't he? He was sat there. Everyone had these pictures of Lewis Hamilton watching Miles Chamley Watson. They forgot that Shaun White, the snowboarder, and his partner Nina were watching the games with him. So Lewis had a great old time at Paris.
Yeah, almost as good a time as James Vowles going dolphin watching, but let's not go into that.
The only animal more intelligent than James Vowles, the dolphin.
You can check that out.
What is that dolphin doing a four-stop strategy? Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on because we're not here to talk about dolphins or the Olympics or fencing. We are in fact here to talk about team principals, who of course James Vowles is one, but he's not what's really of interest to us because in the week before the shutdown, we learned of a couple of movers and shakers within the world of team principals. So the week before at the Belgian Grand Prix, we learned that Bruno Famin was going to be relieved of his duties as the Alpine team principal. He is going to be replaced by a chap called Oliver Oakes. And in the same week, Jonathan Wheatley announced he was going to leave Red Bull after 18 years to become Sauber and then Audi's new team principal for next season. So we thought we'd go through both of these guys just to give you a little bit more information about who they are and what their background is and potentially some of the kind of the big issues in their in-tray, of which both of these chaps, I dare say, have got fairly big issues in their in-tray. Let's start with Oliver Oakes, shall we, Ted? And he's had a pretty fascinating career. I wonder, though, if the first thing you do when you look at his CV and you look at him and what sort of he's done, he's only 36. Is age perhaps the most interesting part of Oliver Oakes at the moment? Because he now, he doesn't tie, sorry. Christian Horner was the Red Bull team principal at the age of 31, but he's now the second youngest team principal in the history of Formula One.
Yes, let's make this distinction because some people have got this story wrong where they've said that he's the second youngest team principal at the moment. He is not. He is by far the youngest team principal at the moment and only the second youngest when he was appointed, given that Christian Horner was appointed back in, 2005, when he was 31. No, I don't think that's the most surprising thing about Oliver Oakes. In a sense, I don't suppose we should be surprised because with his high-tech Grand Prix organization, he did apply, along with Andretti Global, to get an entry into Formula One. Now, it was only Andretti who were granted permission by the FIA. High tech were told not now, but not never. Go back and have a think and strengthen up your bid and then come back. And of course, we know what's happened since with Formula One saying that there's no room at the inn for Andretti. But, Oakes is a ambitious guy. He's used to being a team principal, which is where he differs from Jonathan Wheatley. And it's just never been a team principal in Formula One. And unlike Wheatley, and they're quite interesting comparisons, Oakes has never directly had a job in Formula One.
Yeah.
So
very good point.
But he does have experience of being a team principal. He runs teams very successfully in Formula 2, Formula 3, and Formula 4, and has tried to get into Formula 1. Now, what we don't know is whether Oakes is going to continue to be the boss of high tech. I assume he is, but I think he only starts after the summer break, so I'm sure we'll hear that in due course. But he's an Red Bull young Red Bull driver. He won the World Karting Championship in 2005, a kind of contemporary of Valtteri Bottas, that kind of era of driver. And you see him, I've seen him around the place with Christian Horner and Helmut Marko because he runs many of the Red Bull junior drivers in the lower formula. And so Oakes, does a lot of work with Helmut Marko and Christian Horner in what they do with their young drivers. So he's well known to those two. He's well known to Flavio Briatore, who's now the executive advisor to Luca Di Meo, the Renault boss. And Oliver seems to have impressed Flavio Briatore. Flavio seems to have seen something in Oliver Oakes that he likes and admires, maybe reminds Flavio of a younger himself way back when. And Flavio has recommended, it seems, to Luca Di Meo that he is the next team principal, as he's been now appointed, of the Alpine team, which, let's not forget, is the Renault Works team in Formula One. So it's a big job in terms of status, being the team principal of a Works Formula One team. And it's a big job in terms of the job list of things he has to do to get Alpine actually back to competitiveness. But, they're all making the right noises about his ability to do that. And despite it being his first job in Formula One, I think a lot of people think that Oakes has got a very good chance of success in there because he knows how race teams work. And even though he's never... It's almost astonishing. Oh, hello, Ollie. Imagine talk to him in 40 years' time. So, Ollie, what was your first job in Formula One? Team principal. Was it? Yeah. That was my first job in Formula One. I was team principal of Works Renault team. Oh, right. Okay. How did that happen?
That must be unusual. I was going to ask you because if you were 15 years old, sat in your school hall for the careers day, and you said, "Hello, Miss or Sir, I want to be a team principal in Formula One," that careers advisor would go, "Okay, well, here are about 5, 6, 7 different options of how you become a team principal, right? You could become a business, do it completely from the business side, and you could get involved like Toto has or like Lawrence Stroll has, and go. I mean, I know Lawrence Stroll not a team principal, but heavily involved in Formula One and in the management of Formula One. You could go down the engineering side or the mechanic side. Ao Komatsu from Haas is, of course, an engineer." Or you could perhaps run run a more junior team in Formula 2 and Formula 3, build up that experience, and then use that experience in Formula 1. He's obviously gone down that route, but I wonder if would he sort of look at what Christian Horner's done from what he did with, starting from the bottom of Jaguar and then into Red Bull Racing and go, actually, that's probably a good person to look at for a career path that I might also want to do.
Well, that's exactly what he has done because they've been more or less, he's mirrored Horner's career. So although in winning the World Karting Championship, Oliver Oakes was a more successful junior driver or driver at the junior levels than Christian Horner was. But that's exactly what he did. Horner ran Arden Grand Prix. Oakes ran High-Tech Grand Prix, and they've come up between them. So, yeah, I think he's very much in that sort of club of ambitious young drivers turned team bosses. As a team boss, he'll know what makes drivers tick because he was one. He knows how teams are run. And in a sense, I think he'll be okay on the political side as well, because what Oakes doesn't have, which we'll get onto Jonathan Wheatley in a moment, is somebody directly above him who will be doing all the political stuff. So Wheatley is team principal, but he has chief executive officer or chief technical officer Mattia Binotto above him within the Sauber Audi structure, who will be able to do all the political stuff. Oakes is going to have to do all the politics stuff himself, unless he wants Flavio to do it at a particularly high level.
Well, I was going to ask, you don't think Flavio would take on that, maybe more for show that role, but you think the nitty gritty week to week political dealings would come from him?
Being in an F1 commission meeting or being in the F1 team principals, Flavio's not going to turn up to the F1 team principals meeting. He's an executive advisor to the Renault boss. That's not a position of him to turn up at a team principals meeting. Now, if you're at Sauber Audi, okay, the team principal is Jonathan Wheatley, but the boss of the operation who's taking a higher level view is Mattia Binotto. And Mattia Binotto is more used to being at Stefano Domenicali's team principal's coffee mornings, isn't he? So you'd imagine that Binotto will get Wheatley to run the Formula One team, but he'll be involved at that higher Audi level of representing the team at a kind of, team principals. It's not team principals because Wheatley's new team principal, but that kind of representative level. So, but Oakes is going to have to do that politics thing, and quite quickly. Whereas we'll have to wait and see whether Wheatley, who knows more about working in Formula One, because he's worked in Formula One for many more years than Oliver Oakes has, not hard because Oliver Oakes hasn't worked in Formula One directly, at all until this month, these last few days. Wheatley will know more of that, but Wheatley doesn't know as much about being a race team principal as Oakes does.
Uniquely for Oakes, he's going to come in. Obviously, Wheatley's going to have this period of gardening leave, and he's got a fairly big run up to starting that job next year, which is still, I believe, is slightly unclear as to when that's going to be. But Oakes is starting after the summer break. He's going to be immersed in that team pretty quickly, and therefore he's got. If you look at his in tray, he's got some really big decisions to make very soon. He's got a partner for Pierre Gasly in that team.
That's not a very difficult decision. That's Jack Doohan. But yeah, carry on.
Okay, fine.
That's pretty easy. Well, that's been easily.
You're saying that's actually one of your easier decisions.
That's an easier decision.
Perhaps your toughest decision.
It's Jack Doohan. Everyone knows that.
It's Jack Doohan. All right, fine.
Okay,
it's Jack Doohan.
Yeah.
Your tougher decision is what engine you're going to get in 2026, and is that gonna really make or break his time as team principal? That's going to set them up for 26 either really well, or it could be an absolute disaster.
Well,
and it could mean that they're right at the back.
Maybe going back to what we're saying about Flavio, I think Flavio has more or less convinced, from what Bruno Famin, the outgoing Alpine technical director, has said, they've more or less convinced that a customer engine is the way that Alpine want to restructure what they're doing and what the Viry-Châtillon factory will be doing going forwards, and that they will be taking a customer engine. And the only question is, which one? And discussions seem to have started already. So I don't even think Oakes has to worry about that. It's too soon for 2005, said Famin, to switch to a Mercedes engine. So they have, Viry-Châtillon has next year to do the engine anyway. They can't really change it. It's too late now. But for 2026, once they sort everything out on the Viry-Châtillon side, which is now Bruno Famin's new job to go and convert that factory into whatever he and Luca De Meo and Renault wants it to be, whether he goes with Honda or Red Bull powertrains, or which will be branded as Ford, or Mercedes or Ferrari for the future, with Mercedes being the front runner. So, yeah, I think that what Oakes will have to more concentrate on, I think the driver is more or less done. That's going to be Jack Doohan. The engine, I think they know where they're going to go with, is just sort of doing a few months, 2 months or 3 months, getting to know everybody at that factory, seeing where the strengths are, seeing where they need to build up, and then just providing a new focus and a new sense of direction for that team. Now, I don't know whether I should tell you the story, but I was there when he first turned up.
How every good story starts.
I was there when he turned up for the first time. So we're doing a feature involving the Alpine team, which will become clear to everybody probably around Singapore time. But we were doing some shooting last week, actually, at Enstone. And it was the day that it was announced that Oliver Oakes was joining. And I was just finishing a piece to camera outside. And who do I see appear just as soon as we'd finished and the camera had stopped rolling? But Oliver Oakes, wearing a white shirt, walking into the factory, meeting his new executive assistant, and walking into the building. And I said, hello, good luck. And he said, thanks very much. Interesting first job in Formula One. First time being a team principal over an F1 job. It should be good. But I first met Oliver Oakes. I mean, I know people like Anthony or Karun or someone would have known him from way back when in the sort of junior Formula.
Probably would have been karting with him, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I first met him when he was providing the cars and the mechanics and the engineers for W Series, for the first year of W Series when I worked with them way back 2018 or 19. And Ollie Oakes was running all the cars in W Series. So that's where we first started talking week in, week out, covering that series. So yeah, he's a very, very competent guy. Knows what he's doing, very calm. I can see him having no trouble with the political side. He'll get there, he'll learn. I'm sure he'll have Christian Horner as a kind of, having dealt with him running the Red Bull junior drivers, as a sounding board. some advice there. He'll be meeting people like Fred Vasseur, Toto Wolff. Toto will already know him. Fred will as well. And, Andrea Stella, Mike Crack as well. So yeah, it's very different from Jonathan Wheatley, because Jonathan Wheatley's come from, that we've had this in Team Principles recently. We've had this idea that, like Andrea Stella or Mike Crack, you're recruiting from the sort of pool of engineers. I think you were talking about that a little bit earlier. And that's in a sense where Wheatley has come from, because what Sauber Audi have done is recruited from that pool of senior people who haven't been team principals before, but have been either engineers or sporting directors in Wheatley's case. So that's what Binotto's done. He's seen somebody who can run the Formula One team for him, so Binotto doesn't have to get directly involved, and happened to be a sporting director, but has never been a team principal before. So yeah, really interesting. I don't know what else Oliver Oakes is going to have to get his mind around, really. Just improving the car effectively, which is Alpine's main problem, is just getting the car to be quicker, is it not?
Yeah, certainly has this season, hasn't it? It's been a bit of a rough ride. Go on, let's move on to Jonathan Wheatley then, because I'm quite intrigued to get your thoughts on the announcement of him moving, where Red Bull announced it, didn't they? They said, we are, saddened to see that Jonathan Wheatley's going to be leaving us. We'd like to thank him for all his hard work. And then 3 hours later, Audi released a statement, sort of basically looks like it had been rushed together, going, "Oh goodness me, we didn't know this was happening today." Is that your read of it, or did you see between the two statements?
I mean, F1 teams have previous on this, not necessarily Red Bull Racing, but
Alpine do, don't they?
Lots of them have done this in the past. If you are about to announce that someone senior is leaving and you haven't cleared it with the team that he's joining, that you're nice and friendly and you're going to be synchronizing the announcements, it's quite good fun just to blow their news for them. Even if they're not, it's a bit of fun between the teams. It's like Jonathan Wheatley, respected sporting director. He's done a great job for us. He's leaving to become the Audi team principal. It's like, whoa, it's the last kind of, haha, you might be leaving, but we're going to blow your big news for you. We're going to
make it a little bit tougher.
A little bit tougher. I'm surprised that the Sauber Audi people didn't say, okay, look, if he's handed in his notice and he's okay to let you announce that he's leaving Red Bull, would you mind not saying, or we can coordinate this in an elegant way, that he's going to join us when we're ready to announce it? But surely Wheatley wouldn't have handed in his notice at Red Bull Racing, triggering a press release without already signing a contract to be the Audi team principal. He must have done the job he's going to before the job he's leaving. Bit of a pro tip for you there. If you're looking for a new job, always get the new one sorted out before you leave the old one. You never know what's going to happen. I think it was no more than a classic bit of PR. Let's just announce it. But I don't think it was an outrageous amount of time. I think 3 hours is a perfectly fine amount of time to wait for the Audi announcement. I think people were just surprised when they rang Audi and said, "Is this true? Is he joining you as your new team principal?" Rather than say, "Yes, he is. Isn't it great? We've got a fantastic operator as our new TP." They said no comment, and then waited 3 hours and then put a press release out.
I mean, maybe Jonathan Wheatley, they're paying the price of not having an Instagram account and not being the master of his own PR and not being able to announce it himself. Because perhaps that's what would have happened had he had his own social media account. I don't know.
Does he not have an Instagram account?
Do you know what? To be fair, I haven't looked, but I'm not aware.
You haven't. I don't follow.
I haven't done my due diligence and looked, but I haven't seen him crop up.
I haven't
James
followed
Vowles,
him myself.
as the aforementioned James Vowles, we have seen him pop up quite a few times.
Okay.
But whatever we get with Jonathan Wheatley, I don't think it's going to be hugely public account.
I mean,
but maybe
Wheatley,
I'm wrong.
It's quite a common surname. Isn't it a place in Oxfordshire, Wheatley? I think I've passed a village called Wheatley. There is a Jonathan Wheatley who doesn't look like him. There's a Jonathan S. Wheatley, which is also not him. There's a Jonathan C. Wheatley, which the account is private. It might be him. Anyway,
it might be him.
Wheatley has got other things to worry about.
Followed by Christian Horner, Max Verstappen.
That's right. Wheatley's got other things to worry about than dealing with Instagram accounts. Not least, is he going to move from Oxfordshire or wherever he lives near, having been ex-Benetton, Renault and Red Bull, I assume he lives in the area. I don't assume he lives in Switzerland. Is he going to move himself and his family to Switzerland to Hinwil? You'd have to, would you not?
You would think.
I would think.
Team principal, you would think.
You would think he'd need to be at his office in Hinwil. If you're in the international moving game and you're based in the Milton Keynes area, why not put a flyer through Jonathan Wheatley's letterbox? So he's got to concentrate. He's got to worry about moving to Switzerland. He's got to learn German if he doesn't speak it already. He might do. I don't know. And he's got to figure out how he gets Sauber, who, as their recent pit stop problems have shown, are not operationally as razor sharp as he has coached the Red Bull outfit to be, up to that level. Because if Red Bull are up here in terms of, delivering great pit stops and strategy and knowing the rules brilliantly and all of that, Sauber are kind of pretty much down at the bottom as only in terms of their recent troubles with pit stops. They were losing points. Sauber still haven't scored any points this year, not least because in races like China or Australia or early on, when they were not so bad competitively speaking, they were losing so much time in the pit stop. So it could be a very different Constructors' Championship for Sauber at the moment had they actually managed to go through the race and do some pit stops. So yeah, I'm interested in also, is it Lee Stevenson, who was the Red Bull previous chief mechanic who went from Red Bull to Sauber? And I'm interested in whether Lee had some advice for Wheatley. But yeah, so Jonathan Wheatley's got a lot to do working with Mattia Binotto, who he already knows. But Wheatley's expertise, of course, is as the rules man. He knows the rule book better than anybody else in the world, and he's there. He's going to have to learn everybody's name at Hinwil. He's going to have to learn the language. He's going to have to understand how they work, first of all, before he can identify whether he needs to change it. And then he's going to be turning up to, we think, is he going to be turning up to team principal meetings and deal with them, or is he going to leave Mattia Binotto to do it? That's another question we don't know the answer to yet.
I just wonder on the issue, on the subject of Red Bull, and two very key people have left Red Bull, haven't they, already this year, in Adrian Newey and Jonathan Wheatley. And I just wonder, do you see a shift in momentum in the appeal of Red Bull? I mean, obviously they are probably going to win a drivers' championship this year. Maybe the constructors looks much more in doubt, but say they do win the drivers', it's a winning team. But do you sense that maybe there is a slight changing of the guard? Maybe people are starting to look elsewhere, in that Newey and Wheatley have left?
I mean, it's only two people. Mercedes have lost at least two people this year to other teams. Yeah, it's not unusual for teams to lose at least two senior people. I think the point is the quality of those people. Adrian Newey. I said this at the time. I'll say it again. If you're working in the Red Bull factory, two words you don't want to hear: Adrian's leaving. Can you imagine the impact of those words? It's like, what? Adrian's going. Oh no. And so the impact of Newey leaving and potentially going, Aston Martin is the latest hot rumor as to signed his services to be announced at the end of the summer break. We'll see if that turns out to be true or not. It could be any of those teams, although Ferrari seem to counter themselves. Sorry, we haven't got to the Newey section yet. But it's the fact that Adrian's gone, and the rules guy who has won Red Bull races and championships because of his innate knowledge and in-depth knowledge of the rules and how they can be used. He has won so much for Red Bull Racing, and he's going. Now, the replacement, two things on Wheatley that we haven't discussed. Did he always have ambitions to be a team principal? Well, I suppose so. He's an ambitious person, as most people in Formula One are, and with Christian Horner not going anywhere. Although in earlier on in the year, Wheatley was supposed by the media as being a potential Horner replacement if that was to be necessary, which of course now we know it isn't. I don't think that would have been Wheatley pushing his name to the media as like, oh, well, I can replace it. Because that's the other thing about Wheatley as a team principal. He's going to have to face the media. To my certain knowledge, I don't think I've ever really seen an in-depth interview with Jonathan Wheatley. I've done the odd piece on pit stops before where Red Bull have allowed us to talk to him, talk about Red Bull being the best at pit stops. But, imagine...
Well, it's a key part of the job, isn't it? I think we did a piece last year, and end of last year, didn't we, with Kravtiz as well, and we sort of rated the team principals. And it is a massive part of that job. And certainly creating your own PR or managing your own PR around a team or around a result or around a driver or around a big incident, it is a key part of the job. So I guess a lot of us are very intrigued, aren't we, to see, well, what's this guy going to be like?
I know. So Jonathan Wheatley is going to have to do his first big interviews with people talk about his time, at Red Bull Racing.
It'll be the launch, won't it? It will probably be the launch.
Well, I suppose so. So did he always want to be a team principal? I suppose he did. Was he working behind the scenes with Mattia Binotto to do it? I suppose he was. And who are they going to get to replace him is the other question, because being such a valuable guy in terms of the rules and keeping a razor sharp race team, how are they going to divide up? Now, I can think of quite a few guys within Red Bull who were mechanics and have risen through to be that sort of senior level mechanic role, which Wheatley, of course, used to be a chief mechanic at Benetton and Renault. That's how he got into his position. I can imagine those guys moving up, and they know the rules as well. Some people have speculated that Giampiero Lambiase might go into that sporting director role. I don't think he wants to leave the cut and thrust and the fun of race engineering.
Being shouted at by Max Verstappen every week.
Well, that is quite fun. I mean, until it's not, but it's fun winning races and winning championships. So I'm not sure whether GP would want to leave that. But yeah, Red Bull are going to promote from within. And it's probably going to be this thing where they actually get two people. There'll probably be one of the chief mechanics who will run the race team pit stops and all of that, and they'll find somebody who knows the rules very well they'll put into the sporting manager or sporting director role. But you asked me about Adrian Newey, didn't you? You asked me about
that was sort of my final point.
Sorry, I didn't answer the question.
This up was no. Well, we skirted around the Adrian Newey rumours, didn't we? That is a rumour that's erupted. The idea that Max Verstappen would also be lured to go to Aston Martin as well. And there were all sorts of rumours about the amount of money that would be going Adrian Newey's way, which I guess is basically, here's a check. What do you want? And there's only a few teams that could actually offer that sort of money. Is that fair?
I think it's more the environment that Newey. He obviously the financial recompense is important in terms of your value to a team, and if you win world championships, then you're going to add that value back to the team. I think it's more important for the people that he's working with, the environment he's working under, and where he's working. And maybe the move to Italy would have been too much of a stretch at his age. Maybe he felt that he didn't want to relocate. Not that he would have had to relocate to Italy, but they might have wanted him to do that. So the Ferrari dream of linking up with Lewis Hamilton seems further away than ever at the moment. And then it's a choice between McLaren, which I think I've said on these podcasts before. Why would he go back? He already worked for McLaren, or under a very different regime with Ron Dennis and Martin Whitmarsh, but he might feel a bit odd going back to Woking and think, well, I've been here, I've done this, I'd like to try something else. Mercedes, is he going to fit into that environment with the strength that they've already got with James Allison, his team there? Maybe not. Williams, is that too much a job for him at his age? What is he, 65? But you look at the investment that's already happened at Aston Martin, you look at their factory, he's already got Dan Fallows, who he worked with successfully at Red Bull Racing, to be there with him. He would have definitely, I would imagine definitely talk to Dan Fallows. Sorry about the notification there. I should have turned them off. But he would have talked to Dan Fallows about, what is this place that I'm coming to? What's it like? And I asked Dan Fallows about this in Hungary, actually. I said, would you be happy, bringing him back? And Fallows said, look, what you have to understand is that Adrian is a relentless, unstoppable Formula One competitor. And I would be, amazed if he didn't join another team. And I would certainly welcome working with Adrian again at Aston Martin. And we've all had discussions with various people at Aston Martin about what you can offer someone like Newey and say, look, just come in, be a figurehead, sprinkle your magic dust here and there, put our people on the right paths, and we think we've got the ability to do the rest with Fallows and the team that are already there. I think it's a judgment call, isn't it, for Newey, where he wants to feel happy ending up at. And the current leader, if we're to believe the rumours, is Aston Martin, but it could be any of those teams.
It doesn't feel like it's done, does it? And I think that's probably the most exciting part of it for Formula One fans. Is it's still. Well,
he has to have his holiday first. Adrian said he's got
to have his holiday.
He needs to go off with Amanda and have a lovely holiday, and then he'll think
on his oyster.
Yeah, yes. There's no point
on his new boat that he designed.
Yeah. That's he's there's no point signing a deal now before he's had his holiday. Go off and have the holiday, relax for the rest of the year, and then think about it. There's no rush.
Yeah. That and many more of these quandaries are going to be answered in the second half of the season. You do not have long to wait, though, until we see Oliver Oakes in action. He's going to be there, I assume, in Zandvoort. We're told after the summer break, so I assume he's going to be part of the setup in Zandvoort. So who knows? We might be able to speak to him on Sky Sports F1. But that's when we're going to be back, and of course that's coming around pretty soon. So you can catch us on the podcast next Tuesday to look ahead to Zandvoort. We do hope you can join us then. But from myself and Ted, hope you enjoy the rest of your summer holidays. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.